Hey everyone, welcome back to the Monday edition of the Goody Reader Radio Show. My name is Michael, and I'm joined today by the Sultan of Swag, Jeremy Greenfield of Digital Book World. Jeremy, how's it going?
I'm honored by that nickname. It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I mean, at least you have a title. I don't have a title at all, unless it's like maybe like the court jester or something like that.
We'll think of one for you.
All right. So we have a lot of things to talk about. A lot of things have come over the wire that we've both written about extensively. A few of them have to do with Barnes and Noble, and basically the founder of the company is reducing his stake, and he's done it twice so far.
Yeah, Len Riggio has gone from 30% last year ownership of the company, chairman of the board, to 20%. He's still the largest shareholder. The first sale of stock was last year, reduced his stake to just a smidge under 28%, and then the sale this year was a bit bigger and reduced his stake to 20%. He basically says, he's doing this for retirement planning purposes. He should be able to take money out and sort of, have fun with it. He's older now. Wall Street didn't really like this move, obviously, when a very large stakeholder who's also involved in the management of the company, an insider, as it were, reduces stake. That's always a red flag for Wall Street. And, Barnes& and Noble stock has suffered after a nice multi-month rally.
Yeah, I mean, Barnes and Noble stock immediately sort of like went down after that, and it's not surprising because when you, like you said, when you have your top major stakeholder reducing their stock, and you have to wonder what's actually going on maybe behind the scenes. Is he like being forthcoming in his reasons why? I kind of doubt it. I think that there's always more extenuating factors and things like that. But do you think that overall, I mean, in a short term, this reduced their stock, I think, by a few dollars. Long term, though, with the founder reducing his like stock, so he only has like 20%. Do you think that this could possibly give way to a buyout?
Yeah, it is possible. I don't think that Riggio's. It depends on who bought the stock. If a large block of stock was sold to say shareholders of Walmart, that would be something. But I don't think that necessarily means anything. I think it would be harder for someone to purchase the company if the ownership is more fractured. But I don't think that Barnes and Noble has any problems like that. I think that it has to do with Riggio seeing that the stock had gone pretty high. Barnes and Noble isn't really an investment grade stock anymore because there's really not a lot of growth potential at the company. It's a company that can be a cash cow, it can be a very profitable company, but it's not going to grow significantly anymore. It's physical retail bookstores are the only thing that are profitable at the company, and I think we have all seen the writing on the wall with that. That is not a growth business anymore. I mean, it can be a successful business, and it's one that I think we all believe will be successful in the next several years. But I don't think that it's a growth business. So, the it doesn't surprise me that he sold because I think he's selling at a very high point for the company.
Have you heard of Barnes and Noble's new digital learning initiative called Yuzu?
Yeah.
All right, so apparently it's in early beta right now, and we've reached out to the company for comment. They basically said that this summer, for back to school, they're going to flesh out the site. If you visit the site right now, it's very bare bones. Like it looks almost terrible. But I guess like the essence of the service is that it's looking to replace Nook Study in terms of being able to have an e-reading app for textbooks, to be able to buy more digital textbooks on the go. It's available only right now for iTunes, but you can visit their website, which is college.yuzu.com. What are your impressions of it so far?
I haven't had a lot of time to look at it, but obviously this is an area that Barnes and Noble needs to be in. It needs to find a way to capitalize on its large network of college retail stores. I think that when investors think about the value in Barnes& and Noble's digital play, the value is locked up a lot in the possibilities for education and selling e-textbooks and other educational content materials at a very high margin. If you look across all of book publishing, and where investors are finding value, it's in that higher education area and that classroom area. So I think this is absolutely essential for the company to do something quality here.
Now the question is that one of Barnes and Noble's most profitable arms of the company is the bookstores within colleges and universities in the States. Do you think that if this Yuzu platform gets off the ground and people actually start using it, which I don't anticipate, but do you think that can cannibalize their own or their own textbook sales?
Um, Obviously it can, but that's not something that, the company should be worrying about right now. Obviously the company needs to, be worrying about what is it going to do with a business that is a very challenged legacy business, and obviously that is the its current network of retail bookstores.
So one thing that I've really been talking about recently, and a lot of students in the States have been protesting against this. It's like when their college or university goes purely digital, where they say, next semester, all of the textbooks that you'll buy will be in digital format. And on a surface, you think, all right, most digital textbooks are 60% less expensive than their physical counterparts. So if you buy a new textbook, you're getting a deal. But in retrospect, if you don't have a tablet, you're gonna have to buy one. If like an iPad or like a big Android tablet. But the one thing about digital textbooks is that it almost destroys like the secondary market. So
Hmm.
students that are buying their textbooks used off of like Craigslist or eBay, or in a lot of these college towns that have like three or four different colleges, in a smaller town, you have like a series of indie bookstores that their lifeblood basically is selling, used textbooks. You'll be done a semester, you'll go down to the secondhand store and sell it for like, 80% less than what you paid for it, but that shop owner could now like resell those books and actually make a profit. And when all of
Hmm.
these schools are going digital now, it's destroying more indie bookstores that depended on this, but you're also forcing students to have to not pay, they don't have the option anymore to buy like used books. It's like you have to buy digital books only. What do you feel about sort of that sort of dichotomy?
Well, the efficiency that we've created with these digital marketplaces have cut out so many middlemen, and clearly, the bookstores are, very much under pressure as a result of this. That's one half of the issue. The other half of the issue is that the digital goods are not resellable at this point for the most part, and it looks like, based on recent court decisions, that that's not really going to change in the U.S. anytime soon. Um, so, I think that on the one hand, you're killing the secondary market because there is no secondary market for digital goods. And I would say that you would have to watch very closely whether this encourages people to pirate the digital goods. And second of all, because the secondary market's going away, all the middlemen involved in the secondary market, are going to suffer as a result. So I don't know whether it's good or bad for colleges or students. It's certainly challenging for, campus bookstores.
Okay, so let's talk about reading habits. Every few months, a major sort of study or poll comes out. Pew Research, Nielsen, Gartner. They always release these like surveys and polls to give us a sense on, e-reader tablet ownership. ebook, adoption, things like that. So Harris, which is actually owned by Nielsen, which does Nielsen Book Scan, they recently did a poll. They interviewed about 2,400 people, and they found that 54% of Americans currently read ebooks, and the people that do read ebooks are reading a lot more books than people that just rely on their physical counterparts. Are you surprised?
I'm not sure I believe this study. The part about it that makes sense to me, that I believe in, is that is the part that we already confirmed, which is that people who read ebooks don't very rarely primarily read ebooks, or only read ebooks. Only read ebooks is the difference. The part of 54%, I mean, it just conflicts so widely with all of the other numbers that we've heard. And I called them and I emailed the Harris folks, and nobody got back to me. So I really just would like to resolve why it is that all the other studies that we're seeing say that 28% or so of U.S. adults read ebooks, whereas this study says 54%.
Well, I think it comes down to it, like this Harris poll only interviewed like 2,500 people. And I mean, where were those people geographically located? We don't know. Were they
Yeah, we don't
urbanized?
know anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like Amazon numbers, like here's a bunch of numbers, but like you have no way to actually confirm anything. So it's
I mean,
like,
Harris is a very reputable organization that creates a lot of intelligence and data for the business community, and it's owned by Nielsen. So another reputable organization that has
yeah.
a lot of, comfort with the book publishing industry. So I want to believe it, but I really don't have anything to go on aside from those two things. Otherwise, the numbers just seems suspicious. And I think that the book publishing industry, especially the digital side, is looking at this right now and sort of just saying, wow. And they're not really thinking enough about the fact that this may not actually be true or may not be sound, or it really may call into question a lot of other findings from Pew. Or maybe there was just some sort of miraculous jump in the level of e-reading over the course of 3 months, although I tend not to think so.
Maybe they conducted their poll with like, people in a specific area, like urbanites, because people who read ebooks, I would figure, I know from experience they're more like urban because they're more connected. It's easier to buy into it. So I'd be interested to see like where they're did their poll come from the East Coast, the West Coast? How did the people who did this survey, did they do it on a website? Did you approach them? There's a lot of questions that I
Hmm.
have about this that I didn't really have about Pew or Gardner,
Hmm.
reports because they're pretty transparent in their survey findings. But yeah, I mean, 54% I would say that have ever read an ebook. Yeah, I could see that who currently read ebooks, like, whereas that's all you read. That seems like a little skewed to me. So let me know if you find out, from those guys, and
I will, absolutely.
we can follow it up next week. So jumping to Amazon, probably one of the biggest stories of last week was Goodreads allowing people to sync their Amazon purchases to their Goodreads account. So this is the first time that we've seen direct synergy between Amazon and Goodreads, other than Goodreads, be available on the Kindle Paperwhites and
Right.
things
Hmm.
like that. But that was just basically like an icon that took you to Goodreads. You never really
Hmm.
had like direct synergy, but now you do. Where if you buy something from Amazon and you have a Goodreads account, you could sync. You can elect to sync one or two books, like be selective, like one by one, or you could just like bulk sync everything you've ever purchased to your Goodreads shelf. What are your impressions about this?
Obviously this is great for people who want to be complete about, what did I read, what's in my library, that sort of thing. I mean, it's really kind of the promise of what Amazon and Goodreads together can do that was really powerful for readers. And as a reader who uses, I read a lot of ebooks on Amazon, but I also, use Goodreads to some extent. This makes me happy. This makes me feel like I'm glad that these two companies got together. Um, I think that for publishers, this is also very interesting because, books that are in sort of someone's personal backlist, that someone personally, once was involved in, are now can come back to the forefront. And
Yeah,
I think that's really powerful for publishers.
I'm kind of glad that we're starting to see more Amazon and Goodreads stuff going on because, like, for the longest time, you know, the two sides never really had anything much to do with each other. So I think that this is cool. But I mean, at the same time, do you think that Goodreads will have adoption for other companies to be able to sync their books? Because let's not forget, a lot of like Sony and Kobo, they all use Goodreads reviews. So
Sure.
or Sony did, but they still
Right.
use it within certain segments. They use like another service now. But a lot of companies other than those big ones use the Goodreads API, which is their coding library, to have the Goodreads reviews on their websites and things like that. So do you think that there is any more possible synergy between Goodreads and other companies, or do you think it's sort of Goodreads and Amazon bedfellows from now on?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, Amazon is obviously a fierce competitor. At the same time, keeping Goodreads vibrant means keeping it, somewhat platform agnostic, and I think the folks at Amazon, to some extent, know that. But I think it's also an open question. How much longer are some of these other platforms going to remain, viable in and of themselves? It really is an open question. So, I don't know whether we're not going to see any more synergies between other companies and Goodreads, but I'd like to see Goodreads continue to be a place where reading is celebrated no matter where it happens.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that was the spirit of Goodreads all along, where it didn't really matter if you read on e-reader A, B, or C. We could all go to that site and just talk about the books that we loved. It doesn't really matter if you're picking up the physical book, whether it's a tattered dog-eared paperback or whether it's like a shiny new hardcover, or if you bought it like on your Kobo or whether you bought it wherever. It's like it's a platform for people to talk about books, to share reading progression, reading goals, and I think that that's really the spirit behind Goodreads. And I like the fact that Amazon is making it easier to sync books that you may have forgotten you've read. Or, when I check out my Amazon account, I'm actually surprised about how many books I actually have, and being able to just like sync it en masse. Fairly cool. I just hope that maybe that syncing technology, now that it's there, could maybe be offered to other, booksellers as well. We've all talked about ebook subscription services in the past. Me and Jeremy, you and I track this profusely. We talk about all the
Hmm.
new startups and everything like that. So eRita is a company that burst onto the scene last September, but they really recently changed their name, I think in about December, to Entitle. And this is one of those Netflix for like ebooks, but they actually do something different than like Scribd and everything else does. For $9.99, you can download 2 books per month, and lots of big name publishers have attached
Did they lower the
themselves.
price to $9.99 now?
Yeah,
Wow,
so
that's news.
I mean, it's good because a lot of those other competitor services, big publishers are attached to it, but they only offer like backlist titles. So you're not kind of reading the newest of the new. You're kind of reading books that have been out for a while. But
Hmm.
Entitle could offer more front list titles because it's not all you could eat. It's like you can only download 2 books a month for $9.99, and whatever those books are that you could read. So
Hmm.
what this company has done, in addition to offer a different business model, is they're finally appealing to people with e-readers. So Amazon excluded because they have their own proprietary ebook format, but everyone else, including like tablet owners and smartphone owners, could actually copy books that they purchase from Entitle now directly to their e-reader. So what happens is they allow you to download the ebook to your PC, and then you could use Adobe Digital Editions to copy that book to like your Nook or your Kobo or your Pocketbook or whatever obscure e-reader that you have from China. You could
Hmm.
easily copy these books now and read them on your device. And they're the only actually subscription company that allows you to do that. Most others only rely on
They
their
have their
apps.
own sort of app that you read on.
Yeah, so they have their iOS app or they have their Android app, and that's how you read stuff. And obviously, when you are using apps, you're not really downloading those books to your device. It's like you're reading them in the cloud, and that actually is a complicated thing because I've seen a lot of companies that rely on this cloud reading technology that end up going out of business. And because they never allowed customers to download the stuff to their computer, you have no way to back it up. So you could have bought 1,000, manga titles over the course of 2 or 3 years. This company goes bankrupt, and all of a sudden, all of the content you ever purchased is gone. But if you read like the terms of use, you kind of realize that with digital content, there really isn't ever any ownership. You're just licensing it from the company.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So at least with this, it's a way that you could read the books on the go, on your e-reader, which I think is cool.
Well, the problem it is cool, and the problem with eReader, was initially was the price point, and if eReader has lowered its price point to be comparable with other services, that's when it can start to get competitive. And if it has a catalog that is, frontlist titles, I feel like that could provide a lot of value for readers. They're getting a slight discount. So it's more like a book club rather than a sort of subscription service.
Yeah,
It is a
exactly.
subscription. So they're getting a slight discount. Publishers going to get built-in readers. It's a place where they can discover new books. I think that that's actually a very good move to lower the price and then to be available in those places.
So a big story that's only really happened over the last few days, and I mean this story might be only relevant to people that are in the publishing industry or are self-published authors, people that have used an ebook site called Result Source, and they have been skewered in the media in terms of they're a company that basically will artificially put you on a bestseller list by offering you different packages to get on the Washington Post or the New York Times or even like Barnes and Noble and Kobo or Amazon's bestseller list. How they work is that they allow authors to buy their own books at a discount, but they use like all these different proxies. So you can buy like a few 100,000 titles of your own book, but you're not paying the jacket price. You're paying like a discounted bulk price. And what they
Hmm.
do is they spread those purchases out amongst like 1,000 or 2,000 different people to make it look like more organic. And it
Hmm.
actually fools Nielsen's book scan, which basically a lot of these companies that have bestseller lists, they pull their data directly from Nielsen. So Results Source sort of fools Nielsen, and then Nielsen reports, suddenly this book is selling hundreds of thousands of copies, and it rockets to number like 2 or 3 on the bestseller list. And then that author could say, look, I'm a New York Times best-selling author.
Right.
Eat that, like girl who said no to a date with me in high school. So this company, it mainly appealed originally when it launched. It was like focusing on like pastors and priests and things like that. And then more authors started to get attractive to the platform. The company's made a lot of money over the years, but now they're gone. Their website, which was full of case studies and purchase options, it's all gone. Their Twitter, their Facebook, all their social media stuff, gone. They have like a single landing page with just basically their logo and a contact form. What happened? Do we know anything, Jeremy?
I don't think we know what happened, and just because its online presence is gone doesn't mean the company itself is gone. I mean, anything could have happened. eReader has been in the news lately for some, unsavory, or not eReader, I'm sorry. Result Source has been in the news for some unsavory reasons lately. It's sort of the New York Times has written about it a number of times. You've written about it a number of times. Nobody likes to be fooled. Nobody likes to have their system gamed, and that's sort of what Result Source promises to people. I actually don't know exactly what happened here, and I don't think that we're going to know what happened here anytime soon necessarily. Um, so I will like to wait and see. I'm not sure this company is actually gone.
Yeah, I mean, I can speculate. I know that I've read a few articles in the Wall Street Journal and other sources that claim that they're in trouble with the IRS because a lot of the people that were buying into Result Source were using church funds in order to do it. So they were writing their own books. They actually, got permission, from heads above them to use the church funds for this. But I think that the IRS might be investigating a lot of the church people that really maybe didn't ask for permission, but still used church funds in order to finance their book for Result Source. So that could be a possible issue. I know that that's something that the journal drew alludements to. We'll probably never know because things like this rarely become public, but we could speculate because that's our jobs as
Right.
top industry veterans and pundits and all that type of stuff. So I would probably say that something drastic had to have happened for Result Source to basically like whitewash their entire online existence. A simple rebranding effort wouldn't have resulted in their Twitter account just being shut down overnight with nothing to show for it. So it's a very
Yeah,
interesting
you're
story.
probably right about that. That it probably is not that. But we don't know.
All right.
So
So
we'll have to wait and see.
when you were at the London Book Fair, you had actually spoke with a number of companies that release, we always hear in the digital publishing world that people are trying new things, whether it's
Hmm.
apps or whether it's like this Barnes and Noble Yuzu business or other things. But I mean, with digital publishing, because it's so new, you kind of have to try different methods. Some do ebook subscription services, some just try wacky ideas. But apparently, some of the companies that you've talked to actually make a regular thing of trying out new ideas.
Well, yeah, and we see this in the U.S. as well. I mean, companies like F&W Media, my own employer, tries out a lot of new things a lot. Sourcebooks has become known for being a very innovative publishing company. A lot of the larger publishers regularly bring to bear new ideas and try new things in digital publishing. It kind of makes sense, though, because in the U.S., a lot of people are reading ebooks, and a lot of people have tablets, and a lot of people are reading differently, and, readers are trying new things, and publishers need to be trying new things to get out ahead of it. But in Italy, where e-reading is something like only 4 or 5% of the market by revenue. We have a publisher, Rizzoli, which is a small publisher in the U.S., but in Italy it's a massive publisher. Um, Rizzoli has an innovation lab where basically it's constantly trying out new things and constantly experimenting. Despite that, ebooks and digital publishing are not a sure thing in Italy right now, and I really admire that kind of experimentation. One great example I think we all could get behind is that Rizzoli provides free streaming ebooks to commuters on the high-speed rails in Italy, and so if you are someone who gets on a high-speed train in Italy, you can sort of, through your phone or through your tablet device, stream some free front-list new Rizzoli ebooks. Now, as a publisher, you might say, oh no, we're giving away our best books for free to people who are probably going to buy them. Well, the longest trip on any of these trains is 3 hours. And Rizzoli has the power to rotate books in and out. So, it should encourage people to check out a book, read a little bit of it, and perhaps buy the book later. And I would love on sort of the transportation options here, for instance, bus is a way that a lot of people get from city to city, and all these buses now have Wi-Fi. Amtrak, people go Amtrak city to city, go have Wi-Fi. Airplanes have in-airplane entertainment systems. I would love to see ebooks get in the mix, and I really admire a company that, even though ebooks are not a huge part of the business in Italy, are experimenting and trying to think about the future.
I agree, and I applaud forward thinking like that. And free ebooks on high speed rails. I've seen it before, but mainly in Poland, in Sweden, and Denmark. They have done things like that before, where you could either scan a QR code and get free books, or whether it's like an app that they offer where you could, read books while on the go. And it's sort of the equivalent of like if you take a lot of public transportation, you notice a lot of those free dailies that they offer. These
Mhm.
free little newspapers where it's like, and you get your entertainment, you get your news, you get, local advertising, you get all of that. So I wish they would kind of like embrace like a digital, model of that where you could like get these digital only papers, for free, but a new form that was basically just done for digital, something like that. I
Mhm.
find compelling. One thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about before we wrap up the show. I don't think we've talked about this before, but I think it's a really important issue. The more I think about it, about our ebooks being altered. We haven't talked about this before, right?
Mm-mm. No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we all know that in the US, there's a lot of books on the ban list, for libraries and for schools and for high schools and things like that. Sometimes it's because of its racy subject matter, and other times it's because of the language being used. If you
Mhm.
look at, say, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, a lot of people would agree that that book is one of the best books ever written, and it was done
Yes.
in 1884. But when you read the book, it's full of a lot of racial slurs, to
Mhm.
to say the least. There's a lot of verbiage being used that would maybe offend some of the modern sensibilities of
Yes.
people today. But when the book was written, it that's the way people talked. I mean, you only really have to listen to your grandparents talk, and a lot of them they're
Not my grandparents, Michael, but go
really.
on.
My my
No,
my
they. Yeah.
grandparents, admittedly, they were pretty racist sometimes. You know what I mean? But I mean, it was like that was their era that they lived in, right? So
Mhm.
when it comes to the Huckleberry Finn, it's on the ban list in a lot of schools because of the verbiage that's being used. So what an Alabama-based publisher called New South Books reissued the book in 2011 and substituted all of the of the racially charged words, as it were, to completely different words. So this book now didn't use any of the verbiage that offended anybody, and so this book that they republished was now available in schools and libraries and everything like that. So the original band, this new book, which basically subbed in all these new words, not banned. So we see this with like with other people as well. They churn words like when people said I feel happy and gay, people might equate being the word gay as in happy with homosexuality, or
Mhm.
people may write books in the UK and use words that make sense there, but they don't transition well over here.
Mhm.
Like can I bum a fag? You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
obviously mean one thing, but over here we may think of them another thing. So what do you think, Jeremy, about the trend of people taking royalty free or uncopyrighted books and basically rewriting old English into English that we can understand now, or just substituting words into, taking words and subbing them out and making them easily read? What do you think about
You,
this?
I think if it's done for the purposes of education, for instance, if you have a very difficult book that you want to teach to a very young audience, for instance, if you want to do a version of Moby Dick for a 10-year-old, you do an abridged version. So I think that is a, a theoretical way in which you change older books to make them better for a certain audience, perhaps. I think that if it's done for an artistic reason, for instance, if you say you replace all of a certain racial epithet, which we all know from Huckleberry Finn, with the word marshmallow, and you find there's some artistic reason for doing it, that could be interesting. Um, but for all the other purposes I can possibly think of, I find the idea really abhorrent. And not because I think that something like Huckleberry Finn is like sacred, no word can be changed. I just feel like you're subtracting so much of the artistic and educational value in almost every possible scenario of doing this that it just really rubs me the wrong way. In the U.S. we have a very strong sort of localized system of you should basically be able to do what you want if you're not hurting other people. And if there are parents out there who want their children to read Huckleberry Finn without all those nasty words that they don't like, then those parents can just suffer the consequences, which is having poorly educated, sheltered, and I would feel I'd pity them, pitiful children. So that's kind of the freedom that we enjoy here, to sort of mess our own stuff up. But so I would never do it, and I sort of find the idea abhorrent. But I don't think we should necessarily make a law preventing people doing it. I mean, again, it's a free country.
Well, it comes down to there is a law called moral rights, and many European countries have embraced this, which basically says that you're not allowed to significantly change work and publish it even if the commercial copyright has expired. Whereas moral rights have a less robust tradition in the United States, because it basically U.S. copyright emphasizes the protection of financial reward over the protection of creative freedoms. So you see more U.S. publishers do this over like European publishers. I'm in total agreement with you, where I find that if you change, say, you know, changing explanatives aside, with the Huckleberry Finn instance, but changing like the verbiage used on older books to make it more fall in line with today's standards, where does it end? Because if you rewrite a book to today's standards and then, we have kids, Jeremy, they grow up to be like 20 years old and they start reading these books. All of a sudden, that original book has been changed 2 or 3 times by the time they read it, or their kids have their kids,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden you have like a book like Huckleberry Finn that's been rewritten 3 or 4 times in order to appeal to the sensibilities of the day or the political climate of the day, where finally you're reading this book and it's like it's so sanitized that you're like, why does everyone even think that this is a great book anymore? They speak like we do today. They use, you know, euphemisms that we use today. So, where do you draw the line once you allow people to sort of sanitize books like that? Because you sort of lose that perspective on how people spoke back in the day. When you read Shakespeare or you read like Chaucer, like Geoffrey Chaucer, you kind of know the way that they spoke back in the day. Or if you read like older books by like, Plato and like Socrates and like you read Kafka, they when you read those books, you almost get like a perspective on like this is the way people spoke and this is the way people wrote back then. Whereas if you sanitize all those books and make them so easy to read that it's silly, you sort of like lose that perspective of history. And all of a sudden, it's like once you start changing all these books, it's like we're losing ourselves in history in order to make books easily read. And I don't know if I'm down with that.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I also respect other people's right to make their own decisions about this. While I find their decisions incredibly stupid, I respect that right. And I think that we do have a lot of parents in this country who have done things that are really, really silly and don't benefit their kids. But, I'm not necessarily the best decider of what's good for your kids. So, while I would never, ever do anything like that myself, and I do find it sort of a disgusting idea, I also respect the rights of other people to do things like that.
All right. If you guys want to weigh on this discussion, you could comment on this podcast link that both myself and Jeremy will be sharing with you. You could weigh in on this or anything else that we've talked about today on that. Jeremy, where are you at in terms of interesting things happening at Digital Book World these days?
Well, we have a webcast coming up that I think everyone should take a look at. It is on April 30th. It's noon Eastern Time, and it's me and some of the editors of some of the most popular literary blogs out there talking about what ebooks are readers actually reading. And we're going to look at some bestseller data, but then we're also going to talk to Maddie Crum of the Huffington Post Books, Rebecca Shinsky from Book Riot, and Isaac Fitzgerald, who's the books editor at BuzzFeed, and get their sort of from the gut take of what is popular right now, what's hot, what's going to be hot in the coming years.
Well, it sounds
So
interesting.
everyone should join that.
The IDPF is coming up soon. It's 2 days instead of 1 day, so you guys want to check out that. They've actually released their full speaker list pretty recently. I think like last week they finally released all the conferences, all the speakers and everything like that. So you might want to check out the idpf.org site if you're interested in digital publishing, which if you aren't interested, but if you're listening to the show, that's kind of odd. In any case, you've been listening to the GoodReads radio show with Michael Kozlowski and Jeremy Greenfield. Everybody, thanks for listening and take care.